or 6:30. He got there at exactly 5. So I think this is the kind of discipline we want from him, showing people how it should be done so that it trickles down and everyone appreciates, especially public servants, that you are supposed to serve people. If you're giving in 10 hours, give 10 hours, not 5 hours.
All right.
Yeah,
and what the story you're making reference to, I saw something on the front page of the Sunday Nation yesterday, and this was the headline: Intrigues of the Hustlers Retreat. Yes. Details from closed-door sessions reveal how anxious cabinet secretaries and top officials were put on the spot in 3 days of intense meetings expected to shape Kenya Kwanza agenda as pressure mounts on President Ruto to deliver on campaign promises. Punctuality. Yesterday, no minister, this was on Sunday, or top official dared come late after President threw out 3 for lateness on Friday. I think that's what the story you are making reference to. So we'll get more into this. Let's just get back to today's Daily Nation. But before I move further, allow me to welcome Professor Gitile Naituli, governance expert. Happy New Year, Professor.
Happy New Year to you.
Good to see you in good health.
No good health.
What do you make of this story by James Smart? This is on page 3 of the Daily Nation. He says, a state house of contrasts, the transition from Uhuru to Ruto. The house on the hill is more welcoming, he says, under Ruto, and the epic disregard for timeliness is now a thing of the past. I don't know whether you've had a chance to experience both.
No, but I think when I was a commissioner, I worked with them both. So I can understand. I don't know about the welcoming, but the timeliness, that is Ruto. He keeps time, proper time. But you are coming, that one I don't know, because Uhuru is a very relaxed person. Sometimes when you meet him, you don't even notice that he is the president. Of course, he was different when he is talking to his Mount Kenya people. He was always angry and harassing them. That I've never understood what it was. But the other is very amiable. So it's very easy to mistake him for any other person around. But the timeliness, then that you give that to Ruto.
All right. Okay, let's flip over now and take a look at this next report here. This one by Winnie Atieno. Involve all Kenyans in your plan to amend laws, Raila tells Ruto. Mr. Odinga denies claims that former Mombasa Governor Joho had quit ODM. ODM leader welcomed President's call for an audit of the 2022 presidential election, saying it is important for justice. Charles, you were here when we were watching that report. Yes. Karibu sana, Raphael. Happy New Year. They'll sit you and mic you in a moment. And you'll be able to hear him as I am right now. But we were watching that report. I believe it was by, was it? No, it was not by Laila Mohammed. Laila Mohammed did the Ruto story. And then after that, I'm not sure if it was Vincent Odore, I believe? Yeah. Who did, is it? Yes, Vincent Odore did the story on Raila. And you can find it on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel if you didn't catch it either. So we heard Raila Odinga there say that Uhuru Kenyatta is still part of the Azimio leadership and anything else is propaganda. And he also said that if the government of the day, the Uhuru Kenyatta government, had wanted to execute a coup, they would have. So the events at the Bomas of Kenya cannot be categorized or put in the same, characterized, I think is the right word, characterized as a coup. What do you make of these statements?
Well, I think Raila needs to move away from the past slightly. I think he needs to forget Uhuru Kenyatta for now. Uhuru has retired, as it were. He served 10 years as president. That is the highest you can go. So I don't think Uhuru wants to get back into the murky waters of active politics. I don't see that happening unless, of course, there's an amendment to the Constitution removing the capping on the number of years you can serve as president. So I think Raila needs to become his own man. He has always been his own man. The reason as to why he has always been appreciated by Kenyans is because he's been his own man. Can you imagine Raila, the one you're relying on, telling us that there's someone else there that he needs so badly that he's not gone anywhere? He should not be bothered. If I were him, I would have said, it doesn't really matter. I am Raila Odinga and I'm going after this. I am doing my thing. So every time he looks like it is not him, like he's packaging himself as the person that we don't know, then I think to me that is a weakness on his part. And I think he needs to realize that and just move on. Start strategizing. in as far as the issue of what happened in Bomas, what did not happen, the moment the court pronounced itself, especially the Supreme Court on this matter, it did not indict the chairman directly. I think that becomes tricky again when you continue pursuing at a very personal level, because the court did not say that gentleman did anything wrong. If anything, they guided on what needs to happen so that in future there's clarity on who the commission is and who the returning officer for the presidential election is. And I think that is what the Bunge should be doing through Mudavadi and the members of the National Assembly and Senate, so that there is that clarity in as far as operations of IEBC is concerned. That is what he should be pushing for, so that in future we will not have a commission confused for the returning officer for the presidential elections.
All right, and this story, Prof, I'll ask you to weigh in. I just wanted to point out that it informs the front page headline on the Standard. Raila stirs Azimio with Uhuru claims. Opposition leader Raila Odinga insists former President Uhuru Kenyatta has not left coalition, but the latter has remained silent, throwing allies in a spin. Has Kenyatta tactically dumped Odinga, is the question the Standard is asking. I will pose that question to you, Prof. Has Kenyatta tactically dumped Odinga?
What is surprising is Raila who is answering for Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta can answer for himself, because even if he is out of Kenya, he can speak to us wherever he is and tell us, no, I'm still in Azimio, I've not left. He also, I noticed he also spoke for Njo. So that is tricky, and I agree with my colleague here. Raila needs to go back to being Raila. In fact, Raila lost this election because it wasn't Raila's election. It was election between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, because Raila decided to submerge himself under someone else. So the Raila people knew was not Raila the candidate. Now he continues with that narrative. It's going to diminish even further. He needs to go back to himself, become Raila the freedom fighter, Raila the father of Kenyan democracy, and people will be there, will appreciate him. But you know, age has a problem. It sometimes makes you lose the way. You know, we say that the older you get, the more wise. That is also true. But sometimes why people even retire is because there is consequences to age. I think Raila is giving people credit who probably don't even deserve it, and who may actually not even be in his corner. You see, Uhuru is an extremely amiable Kenyan. I don't know if you look at his personality, Uhuru doesn't have the personality of a politician. Because that deep inside, you see that man is a very good man. Good men are not in Kenyan politics. So how he even became president, personally, I have no idea. Because when you look at Uhuru Kenyatta, he just want to be a nice person. He want to have a nice life. He doesn't want this business of being suckled into an office. So this is his day of freedom. And Raila want to drag him back. If Uhuru want to stay in Azimio, Raila should allow Uhuru to say so. I don't believe that Uhuru will continue being in Kenyan politics, because that's not his personality. Uhuru not even a power seeker. He didn't even recognize when he was having the power. He didn't even seem to recognize it, which is what was good, I think, for the country, because the power seekers can be dangerous, because they can turn tyrannical at one time. But somebody who is just doing a job because the job happened to be there is probably a nice president.
All right.
So
Raphael, do you agree? Do you disagree? Before I engage you, gentlemen, on the sentiments that Raila has been expressing with regard to Chabukati, he said this is a man who is guilty of crimes against humanity and therefore should be tried by the Hague Court, the International Criminal Court. In fact, he went as far as to call him Chebu, and I will not finish because it was not a very pleasant word. But Raphael, on this question of Uhuru, is he not still in Azimio? Will he not remain in active politics, or have his actions this far spoken louder than anything he might have had to say?
Thanks so much, Olive. I think Raila is being a bit nostalgic. You know, he's really wishing for the moments just before elections. And that can be dangerous in the sense that he needs to re-emerge, you know, and provide the leadership that that is required, you know. It's obvious that him and Uhuru are still buddies, you know. They call each other friends, my friend and my brother. But in terms of politics, just like my colleagues here have said, it is unlikely that Uhuru will be engaged in active politics, at least not at this time. And so I think it should be an opportunity for Raila now, more or less, to reorganize his side of the coalition, with or without Uhuru, in preparation for the next election, so that they organize themselves in a way that they do not live in the shadow of the former president. That I think would be very, very important. So he should avoid sentiments of, he should avoid being on the defensive. He's the one who is defending his members of the coalition, you know, purportedly. I mean, whether it is Uhuru or Joe, we should see more of reorganization. We should see more of rebuilding of that coalition, more than saying this guy is with us, this guy has left, and all, because that does not help at all at this time.
All right, gentlemen, Charles, what do you make of Raila saying Chabukati? You know, he's consistently criticized the conduct of the presidential election, insisted that he won the election. So going as far as to say this man is guilty of crimes against humanity. What do you make of that?
I think he's not speaking to the average person, if you ask me. He's not speaking to you guys in studio. He is telling his people, the supporters, the core supporters, that I won this thing. The returning officer for the presidential election is called Chabukati. He's denying me that. And now that there might be no recourse per se, give me this seat again. As long as Chabukati is not there, I am going to get it. And I'm sure this is conversation he wants to work with into the next session of politics. But I think, to me, Raila is not idle. He does not say these things as idle talk. He's addressing himself to a certain constituency, and he's good at doing such things. And essentially, it will be ringing in his supporters' ears for the next 5 years that this gentleman won. It's only that the guy who left, because Chabukati, you know, is no longer in office, as it were. From this month, he'll not be there.
He has 2 more weeks.
The truth is,
he still has 2 more weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks' time, he literally will not be in office. So I think that this is something Raila wants his people to always remember for the next few years, that I won, it was taken away from me by that other one. So we are going to watch over the incoming one to ensure that in 4.5 years, I don't lose it the same way. I think that's the conversation. But in terms of now the general public that appreciates the politics, it does not look good for him, because it sounds like it's sort of like a broken record. Wherever it stopped, it's just there, saying the same thing, repeating the same thing, and everyone is wondering why Chabukati, and especially when the highest court on the land did not find anything wrong with him, at least not in terms of the decision they returned on that day. They did not indict him personally. If anything, they worked with him. They said, what you did was right. You declared the results, and you announced and declared the results, and that was okay with in as far as the court is concerned. So I don't think there is much there. But politically, there is, because he's speaking to a constituency, if you ask me.
All right. So I will give you gentlemen a chance to comment and respond to that, but allow me to also quickly flip through so we can get into the main topic this morning. Walk the talk on corruption. Mudavadi urges top officials, and their actions must espouse the tenets of religions they follow, says Prime Cabinet Secretary. Across the globe, religious faiths have pronounced themselves very clearly on the need to lead a life that upholds humility, equity, probity, and justice. A quote there of Musalia Mudavadi. This report by Gitonga Marete. Prof, on this question of corruption, Raila Odinga has constantly hit out at Kenya Kwanza, saying these guys don't even, you know, like they avoid the subject of corruption. What do you make of this statement by Musalia Mudavadi to senior officials that they should uphold integrity and accountability? in the discharge of their duties. The other criticism, because he was talking about religious faiths have pronounced themselves very clearly on the need to lead a life that upholds humility, equity, probity, and justice. Raila Odinga has also accused the Kenya Kwanza government that has actually hit out at the church for allowing members of, rather the head of state and the other leaders in the Kenya Kwanza administration to use the pulpit to advance a political agenda.
One, walk the talk. That is political, walk talk on corruption. This is political talk. It actually means nothing. Because as a government, if you want to deal with the corruption, you know exactly what to do. You propose laws or regulations. You propose regulation to Parliament because maybe the laws actually do exist, it's just that we are not implementing them. So you can tighten the regulations that once you are mentioned adversely, you step out of office so that we investigate you. You make a commission of an act of corruption painful to the civil servants. That's what you do. You don't just talk, because talking is not going to add any value here. So they know what they need to do. And for me, I've argued that they need to move to amend Article 93. I think 93, either Section 3, something like that.
Is that with regard to exhausting appeal mechanisms?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because that's the one which is blocking the courts from actually blocking you from seeking office if you need to seek office.
All right, so you're saying empty talk.
So this one is, I didn't say it's empty, I said it's political talk. I said it is a political talk. Now the church,
Only been summarizing.
the church here in Kenya, I think Kenyans need to get used to it. These are businessmen and the women, the church. The spiritualism in the Kenyan church is very literal. In fact, this is why I think the Asimi also did not intellectually penetrate in order when they were crafting the message against Ruto when Ruto was running. You don't go and tell the church that Ruto is corrupt or is like that. The church understands that. They understand that Jesus came for the corrupt. He didn't come for the clean people. So what you are saying, you are basically advising your opponent to the church. So the church can also say whatever it wants. I think they will never stop allowing politicians in the pulpit, because this is a commercial enterprise. In fact, personally, I don't have the power. But if you are to have the power, you probably have introduced taxation in the church, except the primary churches, Catholic, I believe Methodist, PCA, the churches which do the work of government, those which have schools, hospitals, there's churches here which actually do the work that the government is supposed to do. So I'll remove those from taxation, but I will tax any other, because look at the names they use. This is just business and nothing else. And as long as the churches are business, they will welcome politicians. They will allow the politicians to use the pulpit.
Prof, what names are you referring
to? But also, yeah, something you need to scare us.
Look at the names they use.
Something you need to scare us as a country also, because I attended some political rallies. And the way the politicians who are members of the church who are campaigning, they say, God asked me to run for this office. Then you ask those fellows, can then God be wrong? They say no. So once they tell you no, you can be sure they will give you your vote, regardless of what you are telling them or you will do or what you have done in the past. So, in my opinion, the church is actually becoming a danger to Kenya's democracy.
All right.
And people need to be brave enough to start contesting that. Because if we don't contest and we mix these two, we could have real challenges in the future. Because you see, what you learn in the church, most of it, you don't question. Because also it's not logical to do so. They will tell you the Israelis were in the desert for 40 years. The distance between Cairo and Tel Aviv is 617 kilometers. Meaning these people are walking like 200 meters per day. You can't make that kind of calculation. You must accept that as how it is put. So we accept so many things. When we mix that with the politics, where we are supposed to question every pronouncement, then we will go into error. So we need to be very careful, and I think Kenyans need to realize there is a reason why the Constitution separated church and the state. Right. There's a good reason for that.
Okay, I can see Raphael's body language is communicating to me that he would like to jump in there, but I will allow him to respond on the other side of this break. I believe it's Nietzsche who said religion is the opium of the masses?
Yeah, yes, opium of the masses.
We take a break, we'll be back with more.
My name is Michael Olunga. Watch Spot On every Monday, 10 p.m. on NTV.
Do everything you can to find out who's behind all this, as soon as possible.
I will. Dad, I give you my word that I will. And I won't stop till I've discovered what really happened.
I take it that you have been paying our debts?
Didn't I tell you I'd pay you back with interest? So of course I have been paying off all our debts.
What can you say about the rumors going about that the individual who is behind this unfortunate incident is a member of the De La Vega group and that he is none other than Sir Carlos De La Vega?
Ma'am, where did you get that information from?
Forever, my love.
This Christmas, gift yourself, friends and family with phones, more phones, and even more phones. Get up to 36% off on selected items. Offers are available at Safaricom shops, dealers, and Masoko.com.
Everybody hands go up, and they stay there, and they say yeah. Me guide them jam, me no care.
For the best of the 2000s, tune in every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Sunday from 8 p.m. to 12 midnight. Rhythm and flow.
Taking you back in the day.
Nation FM.
Welcome to the Ultimate Crew. This is a show that's going to test the contestants about endurance, strength, patience, and of course it's all about teamwork. Monkey band. You cannot finish alone, you have to finish as a team.
Are you ready to be crowned the Ultimate Crew?
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. We have Gitile Naituli, governance expert, Rafael Obonyo, public policy analyst, and we also have governance consultant Charles Munyui in studio this morning. Rafael, sija kusahau. Aya, wacha tuangalie sasa the front page of the Taifa Leo. Nitafute tubadili katiba, Raila ambia Ruto. Kinara wa Azimio amtaka Ruto ashauriane na upinzani kabla ya kurekebisha katiba, akitaka kubuniwa kwa wadhifa wa waziri mkuu, pendekezo liliko katika BBI. Ruto ampendekeza hoja ya kubadilisha katiba ili kuunda wadhifa wa kiongozi rasmi wa upinzani, hoja iliyovutia hisia mseto. Raila naye ametaka wadhifa wa waziri mkuu unaoshikiliwa na Mudavadi ubuniwe kwenye katiba mpya. Asema kwa sasa Mudavadi hana majukumu bayana. So this is more on this on page 2 of the Taifa Leo. Ruto atuliza vita Kenya Kwanza, amaliza vita baridi baina ya Gachagua na Mudavadi kwa kugawa kila moja majukumu yake, and that informs our conversation. But this story on amendments to the Constitution, I believe, is also the headline story on the front page of the Star, and it reads, "Bring back BBI or forget changing law." Raila to Ruto. ODM boss says Kenya Kwanza introducing constitutional amendments illegally. And I can see under there the Cold War that Taifa Leo has made reference to. I can see Rigathi Gachagua and others facing Mount Kenya. That is the front page of the Star. Gentlemen, Raphael, what do you make of this? This attempts to amend the Constitution. Raila says bring back or BBI, or at the very least consult the opposition.
First, we go to the campaigns, and during the campaigns, I think Kenya Kwanza were very clear that they are not keen on changing the Constitution. That was not a priority, and so I think we need to judge them based on that, based on their campaign sentiments. So I don't know why it's becoming a priority now. The second issue is that on the BBI, I think the courts, the highest court on the land, pronounced itself on the matter in terms of the issues and the process and the way it should be done. We all know the barometer, the feeling of Kenyans on changing the Constitution. Kenyans were not ready then, were not excited then. They are not excited. They are not excited now. So it needs to deal with that. And on the way to do it, I think for me, based on the memorandum that President Ruto had submitted to Parliament, some of those changes that he's proposing are fairly weighty, you know, like creating the office of the leader of the opposition, increasing the numbers of members of parliament to take into consideration the gender ratio. Now they proposed during the retreat, there was the proposal of having cabinet members appear in parliament, essentially making them, co-opting them as members of the House.
I think that would involve the standing orders, not
they're proposing the standing orders, but essentially what some of those changes do is they fundamentally change the architecture, the governance structure of the country. And so I think what we need to do, and I think the president should be bold enough to engage Kenyans on this conversation about the change of the Constitution. So we don't have patchy changes, you know, whether you're changing standing orders here, changing an element there. I think we are all in agreement, and if you read the memorandum that he sent, he's agreeing that, look, there is some inadequacies on this Constitution, especially on matters governance, and we need to address it. I think we shouldn't just go the parliament route. I think we need to go the people's route. I think we need to engage with the people, and I agree to a large extent that let's find a way of engaging people in this conversation about the change of the Constitution. It's not a bad thing per se. I think we just need to agree what element we need to change for the better, you know, so that it is not for political or personal interest. But I think if we kept dodging this idea of engaging the people directly, we might end up in a situation where either you force the changes down the throat of the people, or people are going to reject or rebel. Someone is just going to run to court, and it's going to be, again, we'll be stuck where we are. So I think we need to really have an honest conversation. And this is something, for example, the idea of having a leader of opposition in parliament. I mean, we have a presidential system, maybe not a purely presidential system. If you now want to introduce, if you want to, maybe not purely, if you want to introduce now, if you want to now bring the leader of opposition in parliament, you're basically saying, let's have more or less a mongrel of some sort, where you have now, a little bit of presidential, a little bit of parliamentary system. So I think let's face it. If there are things we need to change in the constitution, let's have that conversation with Kenyans.
All right. I saw Prof shaking his head at a certain point.
Charles was
and then
almost
at another
me.
point, Charles was nodding his head, although now he's shaking it. So I assume they agree with some of what you're saying and maybe disagree with
yes.
something else. But Prof, you can go first.
Yes. I think for the president, reaching to standing orders to get ministers to appear in the parliament is perfect. It does not mix the parliamentary with the presidential, which we have. In fact, these people borrowed this system entirely from America. There are two countries in Africa which borrowed the American system. That is Nigeria and Kenya. The Americans' parliament can get any minister, any government, because these are the people's representatives. And in the oversight role, they can get anybody to appear to parliament committees to answer questions.
Yes.
Okay? So that should happen here without thinking we have changed the constitution, because you haven't changed anything. That is the role of parliament, and the government must go there. Now, that's why when we criticize the proposals, we need to disaggregate them. We need to know which areas need the people and which ones the parliament can do without reference to the people. If they have to go to the route of the leader of the opposition, and that's tricky, and the prime minister's position, that's tricky now. They bring a hybrid, where the one we used to have before we got this pure presidential system. That will require a referendum because it's fundamentally changing the nature of the executive. So we need to separate those areas that require involvement of the people and the ones the government can do without the people. And I think Ruto is clever. He's not going to do what Uhuru did. Ruto is going to get serious advice from his lawyers, and is going to do something that will withstand the court, that will not be able to be overturned by the court, because you will follow the law in bringing the changes that he needs to bring. Now, our problem is that sometimes we are being dishonest. My friend here quoted their position during the campaign. We all had it is very clear, but once in government, he realized that some of these things need to be done. Now, can you fault them for that? I actually doubt.
Did he just realize, or was he just...
No, he knew, but he needed to pander to the gallery at the time of the campaign, because he need to make it very clear that these people are for possessions, me, I'm coming to work for you. Right. But now he's there, he realized that these things have to be done, and you can't now fault him for being flexible.
Okay, Charles?
Well, I think we need to guide ourselves in two things. Number one, amendment to the Constitution. If actually we are talking about even basic statute, a parliamentary statute, you cannot do it without the people. There is a provision in Article 10 on public participation on everything we do, including basic parliamentary laws, even the ones that we are making at the county assemblies. You must subject it to the people. And I think what clarification needs to go out there is that when you're looking at amending the Constitution, you either amend it from the starting point being Parliament or the starting point being the people, what we call popular initiative, which is what Raila and Uhuru initiated, popular initiative. And there is a clear guideline on how you go about a popular initiative process. When it comes to amending through Parliament, it is still a process, but ultimately the process goes to the people. And I think there is this thing of when you amend through Parliament, you're not involving the people. That is totally not correct. At some point, at the point when it's necessary, because you must start with a bill. Even when you are yourself as a popular initiative, someone, Dennis Waweru and I think Junaid, came up with a bill that was subjected to the people as popular initiative. So even here, when talking about amending through Parliament, or parliamentary initiative as provided for in Article 256, it is clear there is completely nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to stop being dishonest to Kenyans. We need to tell Kenyans, this is how you start amending the Constitution, but the process goes like this, to the extent that ultimately the people make a decision. Remember, the things we are talking about are really weighty. The BBI process that we are talking about here was not dismissed because of the big things that we're talking about. There were two small issues, not small, because the courts pronounced themselves on the same, involvement of the president. That was the big one. And secondly, amazingly, it was domiciling of constituencies, not creation of constituencies, but deciding that this constituency is going to be in Kiambu, in Muranga, which work the courts decided that is the work of IEBC, and by extension, public participation on where those constituencies should be in the first instance. Everything else in regard to BBI was okay. In fact, the appeals on everything else were allowed, other than those two. So I think this conversation must be had, but in an honest manner. And especially when you're on national television, we need to tell Kenyans that there was, even the president, the current president, was clear, even when he was in Bomas, this is not a bad thing. But there are things that we need to do, and we need to do them right. And I think that's the conversation that everyone is having. These positions that we are talking about, all these things that we are talking about, we need to do it, but the question is, now that everyone is saying we have all these issues, you have all these problems, can we chew and walk at the same time? Is that possible? And I think that's a conversation that we're going to have. Chewing means we need to work. A lot of things need to work. And we need, but can we also think about the inhibitants that are there in as far as our constitution and the laws that are in place when it comes to delivery of services to Kenyans? Are there issues there that needs to be dealt with? In terms of the discussion and the communication around it, I think the president has a lot of work, because him and his team were very clear that hatutaki kubadilisha katiba, kwanza tunataka kufanyia wa Kenya kazi. So now going back and having a conversation with Kenyans that we need to change this, I think he's doing that, and he'll have to do that so that Kenyans walk with him in this process. But in terms of the process, there is completely nothing wrong with starting the process in Parliament. Completely nothing wrong, but subjected to the people as provided for by the Constitution. There are only 3 articles, 255, 256, 257, on how to amend the Constitution. If something needs to be subjected to a referendum, it's going to be subjected to a referendum. If it doesn't need to be subjected to a referendum, and even the courts, when it came to the issue of the concussion, on whether this should be one question, should be or this, the other one, they had a pronouncement on that. So all these things, what needs to happen out here, and especially now, is honesty amongst ourselves, as even the analysts, amongst the politicians, everyone, because we need some of these things to be done.
All right, so I'd like to get into the topic of the day. Raphael, you look like you have a quick rejoinder.
No, I really not a quick rejoinder. I agree with Charles in terms of, the process. But remember, the process is both administrative, legal, and political. Legally, you can go through the process of, taking it to Parliament, a great idea. But I think the conversation needs to be more political, in the sense that you need to have everyone on board. And how do you do that? Is engaging the people from the word go, so that they don't wait until the tail end of the process to start engaging Kenyans. So I agree with what Charles is saying, that we need to get it right in terms of the process, but the people should not come later. I think we need to have this conversation with the people even before we introduce any bill, so that people don't just see a process moving. Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest challenges we've had as a country, where these bills are concerned and these changes are concerned, is what constitutes public participation.
Precisely.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the topic of the day, and we're asking this question: honeymoon over, what will it take for Ruto cabinet to deliver on Hustler's promise? And a lot of stories actually in the dailies in the last few days on this cabinet retreat and what was discussed. And since I happen to have the Taifa Leo open anyway, I see Ruto atuliza vita Kenya Kwanza by assigning roles, essentially, to the 3, and that is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Here is the more detailed report by Gitonga Marete and James Murimi on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Gachagua lauds the head of state for his hands-on involvement in the planning of government activities. We are now ready to work, transform Kenya, Ruto says. President held 4-day meeting with senior members of the executive to plan the running of his administration. At a glance, we looked at some of these things on the front page in terms of, he talked about ending the rivalry between the two houses of parliament. He also talked about digitization a lot. He said, we can send emails. Why are we sending messengers with letters? to officially communicate. He talked about if your in-tray is full, you're doing something wrong. We saw the front page of the Sunday Nation. Charles, you made reference to that. Those who are late were locked out of meetings. Is he starting on the right foot? We finished with Raphael. Charles had spoken before that. So, Prof.
It's your turn. Yes, I think Ruto is starting on the right side, because first, you are dealing with the workaholic. So if you are going to work in this government, efficiency, timeliness, all those things that go answering to the man who is your leader has to be an ingredient in you. Otherwise, you probably will fall out. And I can foresee that, there was always rumor shuffling his cabinet. It never happened. But I think there will never be a rumor with Ruto that is not going to be actualized, because he is personally hands-on, and this is good, because he's the leader, so he needs to lead from the front. So he locked those people out because he was in before them. That should never happen. Your workers, of course, when you have agreed on time, that is, if everybody should come on 7 o'clock, everybody should be sitting by 7. So I think he is going to work extremely efficiently. But I want to say that efficiency, remember, is not effectiveness. There is a difference here. We used to have a president who was extremely, he used to run around the country with a rungu, okay? And his delivery was wanting. So we need Ruto will have to need to be a little cautious here, less verbose. They are talking a lot, okay? If you contrast this, you can try to contrast this with the Kibaki, because Kibaki was the most, as far as I'm concerned, he is the best president we have produced so far. You can't, it doesn't compare with anyone, and that doesn't mean in judging Ruto, because Ruto is only a few months. I mean, it is 3 months. It's 3 months. 100 days. So, but Kibaki talked very little, but it delivered. You understand? So sometimes when people talk too much, just be careful. That is a little bit, you have to be cautious. So there is a lot of talk. The talk needs to cease. I believe that UNDA will actually accomplish fulfill their promises, because the UNDA promises were actually vague. They were not specific. Once the promises are not specific, they wouldn't be fulfilled, because the only thing they have to do here is to tweak the economy. What scares me, though, is when I look at the new taxes kicking in, if that is not propaganda. You can never grow an economy by taxing it. You just can't. You need to leave disposable income to spur production. You need to allow people space for investment. You need to make it easy for people to compete in business, to have an entry. Okay? So when you look at the taxes that is coming in, and you realize that all UNDA promises are actually based on a functional economy, then you realize these things will produce coalition. Let me just give you an example. You can't say you want to digitize. You want to make this country an digital center. And then you tax 16% for every digital transaction. There are some taxes that are not supposed to counteract or countermand your objective. Taxes are supposed to support your objective. So when you look at the new taxes, that I don't know how many of you have seen that wheel, 16% capital gains tax from 5% to 15%. That's a very big increment on the capital gains tax. So again, you restrict people investment. You reduce investment spirit. When the taxes move like that, it becomes impossible. So you are reminded of Winston Churchill at one time. He said he is not aware of any country that tax itself to prosperity. So there is two things I think UNDA and the administration need to focus on: reducing governmental waste and fixing the tax regime. Okay. The tax regime is confused. 20% for, is it money, M-Pesa, money from your account transactions. Remember what you are removing with your M-Pesa is money already taxed, which is now in your account. That tax 30%, but you will pay another 20% every time we remove that money. So we need to figure out what exactly do we want to promote. tax regime need to be fixed.
Okay.
Government waste needs attention.
Right.
Those two will be able to make them move towards achieving the objective. The other thing they are doing very well is they said they are not going to initiate any mega project. That may help them cut the debt. Because once you cut the debt, then you can have some money for investment.
All right. And Raphael, as a public policy analyst, actually, Prof preempted my next question. When he sat down with these journalists at State House, Nairobi, he talked about he said Kenya will not default on its debt, and he talked about basically how much, he said we're left with about 600 million after we've paid off debt. And he talked about the silver bullet being making sure everybody pays their fair share in terms of taxes. And so he said there would be no waivers. But when you hear Musalia, as a Kenyan, watching that, as a public policy analyst, did you expect him, because Prof has raised something very important, we could raise more money and then have it stolen. So did you expect him, as much as he says his focus is on raising revenue locally, did you also expect him to simultaneously address the question of corruption and government waste?
Certainly. I think let's first appreciate the good thing. The good thing is that we now want to focus internally, because we've been focusing externally in terms of raising resources and taking up debt, which is not necessarily the problem. I think the problem is the utility, how we utilize the debt that we take. It's like borrowing money from the bank and buying sweets, you know, something like that. It doesn't help as much. But if you borrow money and put it in productive investment, that's a good thing. So I think part of the challenge has not been that we've been borrowing. I think it's how we are utilizing what we are borrowing. So that development is not development for the sake of development. It has been development for the sake of who is getting something from it, and that makes it very, very expensive. So it is great that Kenya Kwanza government and the president has said that he wants to focus internally. But therein lies the challenge. These Kenyans are already taxed, overly taxed. Two, we are not creating productive opportunities, because if you want people to pay taxes, that must also move with hand in hand with creation of opportunities, you know, productive opportunities for the people, you know, jobs and all that. We still have a very high, significantly large number of unemployed youth. Most of our working population is actually in the informal sector. So I think therein lies the challenge. But the bigger challenge is that we can't be collecting these taxes, and we've been collecting these taxes, but all of us are concerned in terms of where does this money go? This money goes in the hands of a very few people. And so the bigger problem that we need to address is not even expanding the tax bracket. That's an important thing that we need to do. But most importantly is sealing the loopholes. Why is it that money, public resources have been pilferaged, you know, taken into, I mean, just lining people's pockets? How do we seal that? How do you ensure that it is not just you and I who are paying taxes? How do we make sure that the big corporations, people who hold privileged positions also pay their fair share? How do we make sure that no one buys their way out and no one evades taxes? So I think we need to address, which is a big challenge. And I think he's trying to make sure that there is unanimity of purpose for the government and efficiency, and by helping, I mean, rallying everyone around the idea of, look, we can mobilize these resources locally, but when we mobilize them, let's put them into good use. But that has to go beyond talk, and I think Prof did say that. We need to put in place the various institutions and the legal mechanism that will make corruption very expensive, because otherwise, what is the incentive of, other than being a good Kenyan, paying taxes? If you know very well, if you pay taxes, it's benefiting just an individual and not you as a person and the country. So they have a big challenge to address, which is corruption, if they want to raise resources, I mean, domestically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles?
Well, the honeymoon. Interestingly, politicians usually give themselves 100 days to honeymoon, and I think the 100 days were over a week or so ago, or thereabout. And so it's not a coincidence that this meeting that happened in Laikipia came in after the honeymoon that was unsolicited. At the period, the 100 days, they said we need 100 days, and they got 100 days, and they called this meeting, and they had candid discussions on how to progress. And I think now we clearly understand the structure of government. We know now anybody beyond the position of PS, that one we don't have to be very worried about. As long as there is a cabinet minister, there is a PS, there is a prime cabinet minister, and the deputy president and the president, and of course the attorney general, that is the government. And I think it is good that that meeting came in there. And then I think the president has been big on several things. Number one, expansion of the tax base. He's been big on that. He's very clear that those people who don't pay taxes must start paying taxes. And I think he has said what we are collecting is not sufficient. That one he has repeatedly said. The president is also big on savings. And he gave an example of, he's been giving an example of the Hustler Fund that he initiated the other day. And he's talking about having saved close to 0.6 of a billion up to now. And basically what he's saying is, if we have this saving culture, then we will not be borrowing. And I think that is something we need to critically look into as Kenyans on how people can now start saving. He's also big on pensions, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of conversations around the pension funds and all that. Those are things that he's very big on. But looking at now the meeting that he had, the clarity that is there, if you look at the positioning and what he has done, he has placed Gachagua as the person that is in between the national government and the county government, the person who is helping ensure the county governments are properly functional. Remember, these are governments with functions, and functions are followed by the money. Health is 99% devolved. Other national referral hospitals and policy, everything else health is devolved. We did not have functional county governments when we had COVID. I don't know where we would be today. And look, the money is going to them, so you'd expect them to do something. If the aspect of health is to be successful for this government, then the county government must function. Look at agriculture, again, 100% devolved, other than a lot of money that is left at the national level. And I was watching Gachagua, the deputy president, talk yesterday on matters, coffee, tea, milk, and all that, and the plans that are there, and the fact that the president has handed in that some of those dockets to him to implement. They are talking really big about what needs to happen in that. So you cannot have a government, that national government, that does not have clarity in terms of how the interfacing between the national government and the county government is going to be, including even urbanization. We have counties in this country that allocate nothing to urbanization, yet urban areas is where employment is tricky. So now when it comes to now the specifics, and I'm not talking about controlling the judiciary, and I know Prof wants to say something.
Actually, I was going to weigh in
and I will allow them. Yeah, and the reason as to why they're excited is because I've laid the foundation for this conversation.
We're actually concerned, not even.
So my point is this. My point is, if you look at what is happening here, he is saying we wouldn't want a situation whereby we are slowed down because there is disagreement here, there is disagreement there, or there is no flow of information back and forth from this side or the other side. And I think that, to me, is the big thing in as far as is concerned. And he has worked with the former government or administration of the President Uhuru Kenyatta. He knows the areas that did not work very well and the reasons why. So I think, to me, that is big. In terms of now all these other things that we are talking about, investment, the right environment, the same county governments, you've heard him telling the county government of Laikipia, get land, we are going to give you houses, affordable houses. We have people who want to construct these houses, but the land belongs to the county government. So that relationship must be there, it must be proper, it must be properly cultivated. And I think that's what he's doing. Investment environment, my brothers have spoken here. Land is crazily expensive in this country, and even those people have counties that have vast lands, they are not willing to allow investors to come in and do their thing. So I think those are things. Tax regime again, expensive energy, especially electricity. All these things are things that need to be looked into, because again, without investors, as long as investors are outgoing instead of coming in, including local investors, and I will tell you again, he's big on matters Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, he's big on matters relating to Kenya investment. So basically, these are things that, these are conversations we are going to have, but maybe we need to listen to what Prof has to say before he bursts.
We'll start with Rafael before Prof.
At the risk of sounding like I'm managing the show.
I mean, Charles has explained it well, but I think we need also to emphasize that beyond efficiency, beyond harmonization, beyond smooth operation of the government business, there are some essential things that needs to be done from the word go. They can be done later. For example, addressing the question of corruption. That's a big thing. You can't wait until everything is in place so that you start addressing corruption. I think we need to hear the president, pronouncing himself on the matter and taking a strong, making a strong indication that this is an issue that they want to tackle, because that will help more than just having, the interfaces between, executive and parliament, the executive and judiciary. People want to know if we are to contribute this. Now we're talking about savings. Everyone is asking, how can I access my savings? What if my savings disappear and all? So you need to assure them that, look, there is a difference here. So beyond the administrative work, which I think is what the retreat dwelt on in terms of administratively, how are they going to deliver, I think there also needs to be the strong political message of this is an issue that we want to handle, something like corruption and other things that have been barriers to our progress. So I think that is extremely important. And also I just want also to perhaps through a word of caution, especially on the president. I think he can't be seen to be micromanaging the other arms of government. I think it's good to try.
He was very careful with his phrasing. He was, I request parliament. He kept using the word request.
That is true, but we also know that we see how he's requesting parliament. We see how he's requesting the judiciary. We see how he's making this request. I think the president needs to firmly take charge of the executive. Firmly take charge of the executive, and based on that, of course he can do these other things, but if he's firmly on the executive and allow those other, in terms of separation of powers, allow those other arms of governments to operate and function independently, I think we are going to achieve more. But if he's the one who is now telling parliament what issues to prioritize, telling the judiciary what issues to prioritize, tomorrow we see him telling cabinet what issues to prioritize, I think people will start getting concerned that, look, nothing can happen without him. I think what he needs to do is to create an environment where people can be more innovative, people can be more productive, people can be, people can engage and challenge some of it. So he shouldn't be seen as the prefect. And I think he's also come out and shared his concern that people, for example, now see him as the head of the judiciary, that is overly intervening. You saw when he was launching the report at the judiciary, said that people are concerned that he's overly engaging with the judiciary. People will concern because there's the president of the Supreme Court. What is the president of the Supreme Court doing if you're the one who is always proposing what needs to be done by the judiciary? There's the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate. What are they doing? I mean, if you're the one who is always doing, so he needs to have a good balance. And we've seen, for example, President Moi before, who was overly visible, overly present, almost omnipresent. We've also seen Kibaki, who was largely invisible and not necessarily absent, but things were working. So I think Ruto needs to get a good balance of both.
Prof, because I know you will need time to properly prosecute your point. We'll take a break, then we'll come back with you. But interesting that Rafael and Prof talked about less talk, right? More action, because that's the editorial cartoon on the Daily Nation this morning. A revolving door. I don't know who this is that's holding service delivery folder there, but less talk, more service delivery.
So, what are you cooking this Chrissy? Chrissy ni sikukuu na Ajab. Make the festive season amazing with top quality toxin safe Ajab flour.
Ajab, the flour that does more.
This Christmas, gift yourself, friends and family with phones, more phones, and even more phones, and power banks, speakers, and even earpods, all at reduced prices with our Safaricom Christmas sale. Get up to 36% off on selected items. Offers are available at Safaricom shops, dealers and masoko.com.
Sala zangu zote naelekeza kwako we Mungu wangu.
Hamjambo wa Kenya, kwa majina mimi naitwa Ilagosa wa Ilagosa, mwimbaji wa nyimbo za Injili. Kupata wimbo wangu wa sala zangu unabonyeza *812 *801#. Skiza na Nation, supporting local talent.
Few footballers get the chance for the storybook ending to their careers, and Cristiano Ronaldo is no different. Playing out his time in the Middle East after so many years of adulation in Europe is surely not how Ronaldo envisaged his career twilight. Yet, that adulation has easily transferred to the fans of Al Nassr. Delighted Ronaldo has moved to Saudi Arabia for his final years in football.
Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Nenda wapi? Leave me alone!
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life. Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review has got you covered for in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues. The Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday on Nation e-paper and on www.nation.africa, free of charge.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes, you sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year. Angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women, where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As a new example, ama you actually mean that? Maifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema huyu jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Si ndio, ukiwin udive win, si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
My director is singing in my ear. He's going to do-do-do-do. Well, when we were on break, the conversation was continuing in studio. Professor Gitila Naituli, the floor is yours.
Yes, Charles said something that needs to be removed, and I just hope that, you know, he's a very good person. He's a scholar. He will understand this is not a critique for him. the three institutions of government are not supposed to work seamlessly. Yes. That defeats the objective of checks and balances. So if you are looking for this for parliament, judicial and executive, to work seamlessly, you are asking for state capture. That's dangerous for the country. So the more these people disagree, the better for the state. The easier it is to get new knowledge, to get new programs, and to move from stagnation, basically, which is produced by when one institution captures all the others. So the other thing I would like Charles to understand is a very powerful governance statement. And government governs the best, that governs the least. In other words, is when the government is ubiquitous in governance, nothing actually moves. Because you have a center that must give authority for execution of duties. Now, you know, there is not one person. Why we have these ministries, we need to start doing what the Americans do, that when I make you the Minister for Agriculture, I go and check your publications, your expertise. So when you go to the Senate, in the US it's the Senate that confirms. What they are looking is the decisions you have made in the past. How knowledgeable are you? Because once you go there, you execute your duties without reference to anyone else, because you are the expert. So when we go to education, it's the same thing. We have to stop, because we borrowed the American system. We need to stop giving people jobs. The president said something very interesting the other day. He said that you can have the job or the job can have you. You know what he meant is that we can employ you to work for Kenya, or we can employ you, but then Kenya starts working for you because you don't know what you are doing. That's what he was saying in a simple language. Okay? So he is right on this. Now, I want to move to whether we are really starting correct. Our primary weakness has been input production, power being one of them. We have just increased power tariffs, I understand, by 15%. If that's accurate, is that accurate? From January, okay? Power ought to be going down. It cannot be increasing. The president is not mentioning that. We know that the power is heavy because of something called independent power producers in this country, who sell us power even when we don't need it. In fact, one biggest credit you need to give to the Jubilee administration, which it has not been given, is a power production. They moved it to 72%. So we are producing more power from government than we need. Now, if you go to the statistics, how we pay Keningen, which is a government against the IPP, Keningen get like 5 shillings per unit, when we are paying independent power producers from 42 shillings to 173 per unit.
It's something President Uhuru Kenyatta had sought to address.
He sought to address, but he didn't. And therefore, you would think that where Ruto won't start. Okay, you would think that where you would start right now, because that is why we have been losing industries, moving to Ethiopia, to Tanzania, because of the cost of input here, power being one of them. So the other thing I thought that he needed to address is the idea of honest public service. Okay, I'm told that we are the highest delegation to the climate change. In this, what Magufuli did, he changed Tanzania, because you need to change people's psychology. You need to change people's psychology to know that when I get the job, priority number one is the people of Kenya. You know, this is what they say. They say law to the country all the time. Laws to the government when it deserves it. Now, the reason for that is a whole psychology needs to be changed, and they can only be changed by the president, that the delivery to Kenya is number one. So when you go with the largest there, you need to go only with the expert who have something to contribute to that place. So you find that in this country, for example, let's take MCAs. MCAs will make a trip, United benchmarking trip to Tanzania. Tanzania has no devolved system. Tanzania is having the former district provincial administration. So there is nothing you can, if you want to benchmark, then you go to Europe or go to America, because they are the ones who have counties
You're taking them further.
Or a state.
Give them ideas.
Or a state. So what I'm saying is that you need to attack the useless education trips we make for money as civil servants. Okay. Useless benchmarking trips that you simply take to get the public money. In other words, the president needs to instill in our conscience that please we need to use the public money the way we use the private individual money. Right. That way, we all begin to get the conscious of public resources and how to deploy them. And even if this saving thing now becomes automatic, because there is something my colleague said here. The climate, the economic climate and environment, that need to be made positive. So as long as the president is not putting his finger on this drainage system of public resources, the investors are very brilliant. They're not going to be attracted by pronouncements.
All right. Charles, the president did tell the cabinet secretaries that if you're unsure about taking a certain decision, text me, you know, and I'll get back to you if I can. Is the president overly involved?
Olive. Well, he's the president. This is his cabinet, his portfolio. You are cabinet minister, he has given you a portfolio, clearly, clarifying, detailing what you're supposed to do. I mean, come on, let's stop splitting hairs like this is the first time you're forming government. It is not like it's someone else's government. It is his government. You are his cabinet minister. You are supposed to do what is in your portfolio as created by him. The moment we start from that point, we stop assuming we are operating from somewhere, from Mars, that this is you are a minister, you do whatever it is that you want to do. It is his government. It is his manifesto. It is him wanting to implement something. And I'm saying at the risk of sounding like I'm holding brief for Kenya Kwanza government. I am not. I am not on hire for them. I am just analyzing what is on the newspapers. My brother here, I need to help my brother here with one thing. Because we need to, I said, on national television, we must be honest. The Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya is appointed by the President of the Republic of Kenya. Does that mean that she's holding brief for the President? Really? Is that the same Chief Justice who said that, together with the Supreme Court, that the person, Uhuru Kenyatta, was supporting did not win the elections? I mean, let us not assume that when there is a working relationship between the levels of, or rather the levels of government and the other arms of government, national and county, that means complicit. I mean, people are going to do your bidding. That's not what you're talking about. We are talking about you have parliament. You have those laws that we've been talking about that you want to present before parliament. I remember a few short months ago, we had a formula that needed to be passed by the Senate on sharing of revenue. The back and forth for years, it went on and on. Who was coordinating that? We were chasing Malala and Sakaja, the current governor of Nairobi, all over the country. You know, like you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do the other one. And there were members of Jubilee, as it were. There were senators, Jubilee senators. So what was happening? Yeah, those are the things we are talking about. We need to ask ourselves, what exactly are we talking about when we say he has arranged government in such a way that when it comes to interfacing, that relationship between the executive, the judiciary, the executive, the other executive at the county level, the executive, and of course the legislature, both houses. That does not mean that you're sending someone there to make them complicit in your lousy decision. That I don't think that is the point. What I'm trying to say is organization of government. Remember, these are arms of government. All of them are serving Kenya. It's not like the judiciary is there to serve this or the other one. They are there to serve government. They are there to look at a matter that you brought before it and make a determination on the same. And they have made decisions against the president. You know, they were even the ones that stopped, I remember at some point they stopped the vetting of PSS, if I remember correctly. They have done a lot of, even at the county government of Nairobi, which is a Kenya Kwanza county government. So basically, let us stop splitting here. But in terms of the issues we are talking about, corruption, all those things, we have a problem in this country because the people who shout loudest about corruption, ultimately we realize, hey, These were the guys who are even more corrupt than the guys who are accusing of corruption. And I'm not saying either side is good. Basically, we are saying even on issues of dealing with corruption, I think we need to change strategy and change tact so that if efficiency in government is achieved, if that aspect of digitizing government is achieved, if basic things are done, and I give an example of funds, for example, donated by the World Bank for urbanization, Kenya Urban Support Program. That money is that you cannot do it much without following due procedure. Even CDF, look at the number of cases that are in court on matters of national government constituency development fund. Oh, there is no pending bill because there is clarity on how this money is supposed to be spent. If you have money in the account, a CDF account, you don't receive more money. That's the way it is. And you cannot change in between and decide, this was money for this, I am going to use it for that, without seeking approval from the National Board of CDF. So basically we are saying if we change the systems from the word go, then we'll find ourselves achieving this. But if you leave it to an individual or a court of law or the other parliament or this institution, then you find yourself in trouble. So basically we are saying, much as we want to split hairs, the truth is this is a new administration. Those accounting officers we are talking about, the PSs, are hardly in office. That's why they're even getting late. Maybe they're buying suits and changing their wardrobe. That's why they could not get there in time because this is the first time most of them are doing this. So you cannot start talking about some of these things that we are talking about in terms of how to handle matters government on a government. And I'm talking about these guys who have authority to incur expenditure that are hardly 3 weeks in office. It is good to talk to them, address ourselves to them, but basically not throw them under the bus like they are the reason as to why we are currently. Okay.
Raphael, part of what the president said to his cabinet is don't just sit in Nairobi. Kenya is bigger than Nairobi. And he said visit all corners of Kenya. You know, he earned the moniker Tanga Tanga when he was deputy president. So in your view, what was he making this statement in reference to? One, is it that they should broaden, is it a benchmarking, you know, just like getting a better sense of where the nation is, or was this more about focus less on your political ambitions? Because some people occupy these offices and then they're asked by their people during elections, what did you bring to us, or what did you do for us? And so it could be argued that some could abuse their offices and focus solely on places they want to later go and run for elective office. How did you take that statement?
Thank you so very much. I think first I just want to provide us, I mean, a small rebuttal. I think this government, this administration needs to be checked. Even more than any other administration, this administration needs to be checked.
Why this administration more than any other?
No, because this administration came into power based on sort of the promises they made, and some of those promises are far-reaching in terms of they were more or less resonating with the people, and they're more of, can be considered populist. So it needs to be checked to ensure they deliver on that. And what do we need to do? We need to ensure that we have a robust parliament, a parliament that can stand firm and say, look, we do not agree with that. We haven't seen that yet. We need a judiciary that is going to be firm and say, look, this is what we believe is the rule of law. You've heard, for example, the president sometimes make very casual statements. Like, for example, Supreme Court did pronounce itself on things like CDF. What did the president say? He said, we are going to find a way of just, you see, the judiciary did pronounce itself on NHIF and say that the amendments that have been proposed are constitutional. What did the president say? We've sat down with the stakeholders and we've agreed on the way to do it. And the judiciary is there, they are quiet. So we need, and there's nothing wrong with the president organizing in government, that he should. No one is even saying this government belongs to anyone else. It belongs to him, he's the leader of that. But in doing that, the other arms of government have to put their feet down and say, look, we are also independent institutions, arms of government, and this is our position. That is how we're going to get better governance. But remember, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. So we need to ensure that he does not have all the power. That thing of seamless, we might end up with something that very dangerous.
I'm seeing, as you speak, I'm seeing Prof marking your contribution.
My kiss is there. So yeah. So and I totally, him is doing what he needs to do as the head of the executive. He wants his government to he wants to deliver on his Kenya Kwanza manifesto. Great stuff. But who said that everyone else agrees with the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza? The court needs to stand in, Parliament needs to stand in and make sure it's for Kenyans, not necessarily for Kenya Kwanza. That is how democracies do function. On the matter of the president asking his cabinet and team state officials to be to move around the country, I think it's a great thing. And what he's trying to tell them is, look, Nairobi is not Kenya. Feel the pulse of the country, and the way you can do that is to be where the problem is. If the problem is in Maralal and you are here, you might not have a good understanding of how it needs to be sorted. So I don't think it should be taken literally that they need to be physically there, because we saw that when you ask them to be physically there, you remember in the last administration we had Magoa going to check if classes had desks, and that was even more costly, yet he would have just asked an officer to provide a report. So there has to be a mechanism for doing that, so that it shouldn't be taken literally that if you are a cabinet secretary, we should see you moving around. And I can give an example of the cabinet secretary in charge of ICT, just an example. Owalo has been moving around doing food distribution. I wonder how many sites you can go to distribute food, you know, relief food. We've seen them going to places to launch Wi-Fi, you know, free Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. Good initiative, but truly does not require a CS to be there. So I think there has to be a mechanism for doing that, so that the president also should provide a caveat and a disclaimer that that does not mean that we now spend or waste public resources being present in every place.
Prof?
Yeah, I'm just, that statement kind of surprised me also, because I consider that they move around the country. You see, I consider the President Ruto as one of the very first philosopher kings. Somebody who really should understand what he is doing. There is something called executive time. And how you are supposed to use executive time. In these villages, the government has machinery there to know where the project priorities of government to identify. The provincial administration is still intact, and they still funding the state. So the time in your office as a minister is when you should be having projects labeled on a big board. There is a project in this particular area. It is at this stage of completion. I need a report on this stage, because there are those experts supervising those projects which are supposed to give you the summary of status of those projects, and then your staff or yourself, you summarize them for the end of state. Because
but Prof, maybe he's trying to keep people on their toes. You know, you never know when.
But you see, when he says this country is not more, you saw that during the election how much it was really trying them to move. When he gives them that authority, they will be very happy to move, because every time you're out of Nairobi is pandemic. You know, he just talked about what it cost you to go and loan the Wi-Fi, because these ministers, they have 2 or 3 cars, they have the staff, okay? So the budget, when you get out, the minister gets out is pandemic, his staff is pandemic. So is that worthy? You understand what you are doing? Is that the best way to use executive time? So I think that couldn't be a statement in just saying, because you know when you are talking, you do say a lot of things. But having said that, though, I want to bring my friend to one way I saw that the Jubilee administration was determined to deal decisively with the corruption. I don't like using that term too much, because Kenyans really seem to like it. So using the President Uhuru Kenyatta issued an executive order #1 of 2018, where he enhanced what is in the demanded in the Constitution: transparency and accountability. In that executive order, he said, whoever takes the tender, you post in a government website. The tender went to this company. These are the directors. These are the company this bid. These are the reasons why they failed to get the bid. That executive order was ignored 100%, and because that would have dealt the nail it would have been the final nail in the
Coffee.
exactly of corruption, but it was ignored. So I would think that Ruto saw that. He's aware of that executive order. I think for transparency and accountability, this is in Article 10, I think 2C. That would be a wonderful place to start, because wherever there is transparency, okay, the piverage ceases. It stops, because as long as we continue with this piverage, it's irrelevant how much money we raise.
All right. So just taking a look at what happened at the retreat, according to the Sunday Nation, we talked about punctuality, 90-day deliverables, ministers placed in clusters to lay down key deliverables for the next 3 months, complete with source and ways of funding. Inquisitive President in the 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. meetings, President demanded concise answers on ministries' plans in line with the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. Legal suits. The president warned ministries and departments on costly suits against each other once conflicts solved outside courts. And I just want to scroll to the story here. And breakfast was served at 6:30 a.m. with the first session promptly beginning at 7:30 a.m. Keeping up with Ruto, how officials found the going tough in Nanyuki. Sunday Nation has established that the president threw out 3 senior government officers for being late. We looked at that again. Mudavadi is quoted as speaking on corruption. There is one issue that we must also be wary of: corruption. The greed for material wealth that drives us into corruption prevents us from realizing our full potential. All right, Charles.
Yes.
Last words on the Ruto cabinet. Do they inspire confidence in you that they will be able to, given this start, deliver on the hustler's promise?
I think the intention is good. Let me start there. The president has good intentions, and I am happy he's taking charge, because I think that's where we have gone wrong many a time. That you fail to take charge. You give someone who looks good a position, and then you lay it back. You let them do whatever it is that they want to do, yet it is your manifesto. And I think we need to start there. My brother here said people might not necessarily like what Kenya Kwanza manifesto stands for. That is the manifesto they voted for, and the majority have their way. Whether we like it or not, that is the manifesto that is being implemented, because that is what he sought government to do. So essentially the portfolio again is to ensure he delivers on that manifesto. That is why he's big on it. I think what we need to do as a people here is to delve into that manifesto and ask ourselves. He talked about, we know, for example, pending bills are huge. There are people who are owed billions of money in contracts, in delivery of supplies, this, the other one. The Kenya Kwanza government talked about securitization, where you put together all these pending bills and turn them into a bond, sell them to investors, pay the contractors, pay the suppliers, and then you deal now with the bond. So where are we with that? Because that is part of the conversation. We need to pay these people so that the country can move. If those people have their money in their pockets, you trust me, a lot of things will change. We go to agriculture. The discussion should be, a lot of things have been said. There are reports, major reports on coffee, on tea, on this, the other one. Are we going to go back to investigating what the problem is? I saw the deputy president yesterday talking about the coffee sector, for example, and tea, and saying he is going to implement a report that was prepared in 2019, 3 years ago, that has been sat on, quote unquote, by the previous administration, which talks about very simple things, for example, basic things about the institution, the research institution, capacity building the same. We're talking about the pricing and all that. We're talking about clearing the cartels that are in between the farmer and the consumer of the coffee, for example. These are the things we are talking about. Implementation of some of these things that have been there that we know have very simple, workable solutions, that then the country can move forward. Even as we look at the bigger, huge things, this country has been burdened big time by huge projects, and I think that is an area, and I think all of us have raised concern with that, and reasonably happy that that is not going to happen, because it is a cost to the current Kenyans who are there. The citizenry today have really borne the burden of these huge projects. Yeah. And the country is not ending tomorrow. So we should be able to split this so that we stagger it, so that as a country we breathe, as a people we breathe much as we need all this development. So this whole thing of even cutting down on deficits so that we don't continue borrowing to fund the deficit. I have seen a clear strategy in that regard. So essentially, I feel it could work. It will work, depending again on implementation, because ultimately there are always very good plans out there. The question is implementation. What are the strategies for purposes of implementation to the extent that we'll start seeing that? Number two, what are the landmarks? What we need to see in 3 months so that we know we are going in the right direction? And I think that is the discussion that is going to happen. In as far as I'm concerned, what Kenya Kwanza must come up with is a good communication team. It cannot do without a proper communication team, so that when you talk about things, big things like GMO, for example, you don't have your senior officials confusing that with things like hybridization or cross-pollination, because those are completely different things. We need people who can be able to talk and address themselves to people who understand these things and convince them on what you're talking about, as opposed to people who will come here and tell us that GMO is hybridization. You know, it is not true. So if we don't have that team explaining to people the relationship between savings and reduced borrowing, external borrowing, then we will have a situation whereby people have no clarity on issues, and you'll find yourself timing on the same spot.
All right, Charles, you lost me at hybridization. But Raphael, your last words. You know, does it appear that the Kenya Kwanza cabinet have their priorities right, heads on straight? Have they started on the right foot?
I think one is we have a government in place. The president asked for the job, he got it. Kenya Kwanza asked for the job. They have it. They're trying to constitute and reorganize and organize themselves, which is a great thing. And I think the president is trying to share his vision with his team, so that the president can have the right intentions, like Charles says, because truly he's the one at the apex. So maybe, and it's possible he has the right intentions, but the team does matter. Remember, a team is just as good as the team members. So you can be very good as a team leader, but if the team members do not share in that vision, there is a problem. And of course, in appointing his team, he did embrace a certain approach. For example, other people would say, let's focus on competence and merit or professionalism. He chose another model, which is basically loyalty. So that perhaps he saw that in the previous regimes there was no loyalty, and that caused a lot of problems. So everyone is waiting to see, will loyalty deliver on the kind of promises that they made. Of course, there are doubts from different quarters, including if you read the deputy president's speech and even Mudavadi's speech. They were like, we need to prove people wrong. And so they were saying, look, people are doubting if you can deliver. So let's show them that we can deliver. So there are doubts from outside and also from within. And of course, they need to be, what I would ask the government to do, and the Kenya Kwanza to do, and the president to do, is to empower these cabinet secretaries in a way that enables them to do the work. I think we shouldn't go back to where we were with Moi, where people had to look over their shoulder or over someone for them to make even small decisions. So I think the president needs to empower them. I like the idea of sending an SMS, but that also means that these people are not empowered enough to make certain decisions. So why don't you give them the capacity so that they don't go to a meeting and say, I'm going to ask the president. So empower them. That is one. Give them the capacity.
Okay, Raphael, I'll have to stop you there so that Prof can also get a chance for his last word.
So empowerment of cabinet secretaries. That's
right. Yeah. Prof, your last word.
So I like the clustering of the ministries, because that really will enable them to deliver. Because clustering means there will be no cross-cutting. They may not be doing the same thing, so there is no duplication, and that's a good thing. In management, there's something you don't do. You don't reward intentions, you reward results. So, so intention has been mentioned many times. you wonder, why are we even having pending bills? Okay, because we discuss some things that should not be part of the discussion, because our budget is very clear. You know, the budget can go to Parliament and it becomes law.
Okay.
The law is clear. You cannot use money which was not budgeted. So if the money was...
I'm on borrowed time. I'm on borrowed time.
Okay. So the pending bill issue should not even be there. If you are going to pay them, then someone needs to go to jail because they use money that was not authorized. Okay. Or they varied a vote which is supposed to be varied only by Parliament or by County Assembly.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've had Charles Munui in studio, governance consultant, public policy analyst Raphael Obonyo, Professor Gitile Naituli, governance expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your input. I apologize for rushing you at the end there. My name is Olive Burrows. We've started, I think, on the right note this year on AM Live. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, myself and Leila Mohammed will be joining me on set. Together with a panel of experts, we will be discussing the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. See you tomorrow morning on AM Live.